Hey y'all, it's Way. So back to basics. Basic spirituality. Basic. And this is basic, but it's actually very advanced and continues to always be applicable. Is the ability to be with yourself, to hold energies, emotional energies, frequency, fluctuation, resistance, whatever seems to arise in your, I can label these a lot of things, but it's actually a lot simpler than that. You can just call it emotional energy, feeling, sensation that arises within the body. Being able to be with that, to allow that, to hold that, to not want to run from that, to escape that, but to see the energies that want you to run from that and escape that. I used to have a good teacher. He used to always say, from awareness, you're always underneath it. Whatever's arising, you're always underneath it when you choose to be aware. When you choose to step back. Now, that type of underneath it is not, some trying to get underneath it to not deal with it. Some type of underneath it to not have to fully go in. It's a bit of a paradox with it, a thin line. This type of what could be called forgiveness, what could be called transmutation, of being willing to hold these things lightly within the field of your awareness. Allow these to be given back to source, back to spirit, back to God, however you would frame it. But it has to come from some open level of the heart, right? It cannot be from this constricted, judgmental space of, let's get this shit out of here. Let's get, the judgment that's in regards to that, right? That you can be that, not that that can't be there. Again, this is where it gets weird. But if that's there, you're underneath that too, right? That in itself becomes what's being offered up, what's being given. What's being forgiven, what's being transmuted. And this is true resolution. This is true healing. This is true, you could say, karmic forgiveness. Repentance, you could say. Now, I'm not going to lie and pretend there's not some subtleties to this. As I was just talking about, it gets very layered and knotted with the way that it wants to mask and come up and confuse. And if you're not used to or adept to being emotionally aware within your experience, then yeah, there's going to be a period of kind of learning, of being willing to tune into that, of coming back into the body, to the sensation. And this is where, this is always applicable, because at whatever state of awareness, whatever, how much bliss, that's a combination of bliss and peace that I was trying to say, how much bliss and peace is in your awareness, you can still have these fluctuations, these surfacings. That's another way we used to frame it. What's surfacing in your experience to be called up, to be called up and allowed for resolution, processing, healing, forgiveness, and transmutation. But it's always the simplest process. It's that mere allowing of yourself to recognize that, to hold that. And simultaneously, you can do that lightly, but there is also a time and a place to really go in depth to wherever that seems to be. If there seems to be a stuck place within the body, wherever it's located, head, throat, chest, solar plexus, gut, these, you can tune into that. I don't care where you're at. Even initially, you can become acquainted with that. We tend to stay stuck up in the mental sphere and caught up in that cycle to overlook that coming in. And it's really through that coming in to those energies that will resolve all of that seems to be in that sphere. Right? We tend to, a lot of folks want to have it backwards and want to try to figure it out, on that level and chase that and while not really being willing to go within and allow whatever seems to be there, that space that is required, that little willingness as it's framed in the Course in Miracles, to allow the Spirit to do its job, to allow your own judgments and condemnations of yourself, your own constricted energies, to be forgiven and transmuted. So, this is tied into somatic work. It's going to become more and more popular within just the field of psychology, because it's going to be more and more acknowledged, and already is now, but it's just going to kind of expedite more and more rapidly of this. And there is room for this to evolve into deeper things throughout the process, right? You can see, because this can tie in to stuff that is not associated with this life in particular. It may be associated with whether you want to call it past lives or parallel lives that seem to be going on. May be associated with specific collective trauma that's going on. Certain frequency disruptions that are happening within the field, right? And you always have that choice to be willing to acknowledge that, or to try to run from that, to try to dismiss that. There is subtlety to this, because there are things that at a point want to keep things looping, want to have you in a perpetual state of this process. But that's a little bit more advanced. I think I'll save that for another video. And really learning how to just allow this and stabilize within your own field, come back into that embodiment of connection, that's that grounded space that can also allow all that to ascend to the Spirit, with the Spirit, but is not allowing extra new influence to come in and try, because it's like, if you're clearing this out, that's not doing any good if you're just constantly being bombarded and allowing this new stuff kind of to come in and flow in. And it's like, oh, then, I'll just got to learn to open myself up to everything and blah, no, you'll get fried out like that. Right. So this is, there's a thin line there with that. But there is a balance. There is a balance that can be found. An authenticity, an awareness of when I'm being called to really go within, to bring this in, or when I'm being called to see that this is just noise. This is just outside interference that's trying to come in. So, and I don't really want to go into that, because that's the whole topic. So again, I'll save that for later. But initially, it is about just the willingness to open up in your awareness and learn how to tune into yourself, your body, and allow these things to process out. The shadow work. This is shadow work. You're bringing those shadows to the light. It is very simple, but it's always applicable. And without this, progress will at a point be stalled. So that's why I bring it up. So keep on keeping on, rock it out. And, as always, this too shall pass. Like it's never, this is the trickiness of a lot of these energies is we can have this level of resistance to them of like, especially like certain ones that come up of like, oh no, not now. I don't want to deal with this now. I don't have time to go in and face this. This has been going on for so long. Why am I not, done with this? And within that, there's oftentimes a lot of either resistance that's not being acknowledged or a lot of kind of this exterior kind of interference that's wanting to conflict and distort and keep one confused and looping. So, and these are things that, you're going to deal with as you kind of evolve on the process, but the process is always the same. It's always being willing to come back to take responsibility and ownership of your experience, of what's arising in your experience. To not delay. All right now it's here. There's always an opportunity. Like this stuff, if you continue to dismiss it, what you're gonna find is that it's just gonna keep bubbling up, you're just pushing it back down to bubble up, pushing it back down to bubble up. It's like it's like if you're in a pool and you got like little swimmies or noodles and you're just like pushing them back down. You can shove it to the bottom, try to shove it to the bottom of the pool. It's just gonna get boom, it's gonna bubble up. And it's like boom. It's when that's there, how are you choosing to be with that? Can you look on that with an open heart? Can you give that to the Spirit? And when I say give that to the Spirit, this is not some like complicated abstract thing. That is merely the willingness to look on it with the open heart. It's really that simple. Your willingness to hold it within the light of your awareness. Light of your awareness is not an abstract thing either. Now, that may change and evolve, like what that seems to mean to you, but it's just, can you give your attention to this? We try to, there's so many terms and teachers and teachings that use different terms that are oftentimes pointing to the same simplicity that can get overlooked. Like I said, I started out, this is a simple, basic process. Very basic. Yet so many people at some point start to dismiss it. They grow tired of it. That's part of the trap. It's like wanting to be done with it. That's a good line from A Course in Miracles. My happiness and my function are one. When you learn that's what it's about here. That's where the excitement is. That's like to be willing to go through this. This is the calling. Because what you do for you is assisting everything and everyone. This is a quantum rippling throughout the all. There's arguably no greater service than the mastery of yourself and the willingness to hold space for yourself in whatever arises. You can't really hold space for other people until you can do that for yourself. All right? You can't give away what you don't have. And this allows for that. This allows, people talk about being empaths and stuff, and this allows for that to grow within, and that ties into kind of collective transmutation and things, because you can become aware that like, okay, this isn't really like my stuff in that way. All right, but you can't really take something for somebody else that they don't want you to. You can't really take something from somebody that you don't want to take. right? And there's a lot of immaturity with that too, because then there can be like I was talking about, is maintaining your field. There can be that self-centered space of wanting to shut yourself off too, not wanting to deal with anything else. Oh no, I'm good. I got, my space. I'm clear. I'm good. I don't want to deal with anything else. There is nothing else. It's all tied. It's all tied. Yes, there is that thin line to where you can see, like, where you might be kind of taking on and inviting in more than your share in a certain way, more than you necessarily need to be. You're opening yourself up to energies that you're not necessarily called to. But there's a lot of subtlety there. There's a lot of self-honesty that has to come up. That tends to hold to, if it's arising in your experience, if it's coming up, then that's yours to deal with. There's a reason for that, right? Own it. Take responsibility for it. Don't try to keep the projection and the blame out there. Don't try to shut yourself off. You were free. You were holy. You are intrinsically tied and a part of what has all power. Light, life, truth, love, God, source. You need not run from anything. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need to run into everything either, right? So again, it is a thin line, a little bit of a paradox there, a lot of self-honesty that's required. And with that, hindsight's always 20/20. You'll find out if you start to, continue to stick your nose where it doesn't belong, so to say. You will realize that. It doesn't make it wrong, and it doesn't mean, in the immediacy, it didn't need to be coming up that way. This is all karmic. You're probably resolving where you've done that in the past, and it hasn't worked out well. Again, whether that's this life or tied to others. So nothing is ever out of place in that way. But it does seem to be a learning process. There does seem to be some learning curves within that. But it always comes back to that willingness. That willingness to be with it, that willingness to be with yourself and be honest with yourself objectively, to be shown, to be guided, to not stubbornly try to cling to one, little area. Yes, straight and narrow is the path, but that is always aligned with, that thy will be done. And allowing me to be aligned with that, having that devotion, that commitment, that bodhisattvic humility and willingness. So, yeah, to me, this is the path. That is the path. That's all the teachings, all the masters. This is it. That's it. That's what carpe diem. Seize the day. That's what the day is for. The day is for forgiveness, transmutation. That is the great work. Alchemy, the philosopher's stone. And through this, the recognition of the truth. That none of this can actually really touch you. None of this has ever changed your identity, has ever threatened the truth of you. You're merely looking on all that proposes otherwise. Sooner or later, no doubt, you will start to recognize shadows as just shadows. They have no effect. They have no threat. You were safe. You were whole. You were complete. You were innocent, untainted, free, loved, held in the light of truth with God and all your brothers and sisters, forever out of harm's way. You merely forgot for a little while. That's okay. We're here to remember. So thank y'all. I love y'all. It's a beautiful Saturday. South Carolina might have some hurricanes rolling in, or a hurricane getting pushed into us. We'll see. Who knows? They don't know yet. They got these charts doing like 90-degree angles going back out to sea. So, thy will be done. Thy will be done, Lord. Thy will be done. As always, I pray for my little willingness to continue on and play my part. To serve that, to serve the truth, to serve the power, to serve all. To be willing to love myself so that I can love others. Don't be so hard on yourself. That's a trip. That's a trap. It's all right. You're all right. I love you. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.